Hello, everybody. I'm Ed Parcaut, your host of Helping the Brave. Let's bring in our guest today. How you doing, Connard Hogan?
Hello, Ed. I'm doing okay at the moment. How about you?
Going good. It's
All right.
we've all right. Let's just get into it, shall we?
Okay.
It's taken us a while to get to this, but we're here now, and
Finally here.
sometimes, yeah, it depends on how you're doing things, and so I don't have a lot of Vietnam vets who come on the show, and it's
Mhm.
nothing personal because I prefer to have a Vietnam vet because you guys were treated the worst when you came in, or actually when you came home. The question is, what service did you choose, and did you get a choice in it? And if so, why did you choose it?
Okay. I think I inadvertently chose the Army because I was drafted initially.
Okay.
I dropped out of engineering school, and the Army said, "We want you." Um, after when at that point at that time when we entered the military, we were inducted. We went to a processing center, and we were there maybe 3 to 5 days or whatever to do initial things before we were assigned and went to a basic training unit. So within about 3 days, they had us march over, gave us a pep talk. They weeded out people who had criminal histories or records of being arrested and in jail, marched them off to give blood, and the rest of them, they gave us a pep talk and they said, if you sign up, if you take a test to determine what kind of job you're going to have in the Army, you have an option. If you sign up for 3 years, in other words, enlist, we'll give you that MOS, that job. But, and the guy said, I think these are his exact words, I guarantee if you don't do that, you'll go to Nam in the infantry. Well, I decided I did not want to do that. So I took the test, enlisted, and qualified and became a 96 Bravo 20, which was an intelligence analyst. I figured that would probably be the safest thing I could do.
Was it?
It was,
Okay.
I believe.
Okay.
As it turned out, I was assigned to a detachment to 2 Corps headquarters in Nha Trang, which was right on the coast. And the first 6 months, I was billeted in the headquarters compound. It was like a postage stamp, right on the beach. And when we had time off out of the office, we could do what we wanted. We could actually leave the compound and go across to the beach. And I did that a few times. And then we also, we weren't supposed to be out at night past 10 p.m., but, we were cavorting around town a lot of times until then, and a couple of nights I kind of overstayed my time away from the postage stamp. So
Well,
I think it was pretty safe. Yeah.
I mean, I don't. Have you seen the Vietnam series on what is it, Apple TV?
Not on Apple.
Yeah, they
I
have
saw
one.
one. Ken Burns did one, but I don't know if that's what you're referring to.
I don't. It's one. It basically it's from the. They had videos and stuff, and they talked to the Viet Cong and all that stuff. Their take on it and the whole night. Did you see that one? That's the one I was talking
I
about.
don't think so. I don't think so. No.
Because the weirdest, a lot of there's so, and I don't care what side you're on. It's not what my purpose is. It's just to get the information out there.
Sure.
But they were talking about. They were like, they had no idea why we were invaded by these people.
Yeah. Well, oddly enough, I think some people would know this, but generally people don't. In Vietnam, they call it the American War.
The American War, is that what they
The
call it?
the American War.
Wow. So you were in for how long? I mean, because I know originally it was 3 years, right?
Uh, 2 years, 8 months, and 8 days. I got a seasonal occupation early discharge, which was maybe about 4 months short of the 36. Let's see, is that right? No. 36, 8 months. I got an 8 month drop or 8 months early discharge.
Okay. All right. And then, so what did you do? So you were intelligence the whole time.
Yeah.
And then you got out early,
Uh
a few
huh.
months early. And what did
Yeah.
you do after that?
Um, it took I got out in October, and I enrolled in college, go back to school. I started like January, and then attended and graduated from graduated with a BS in sociology, and then or BA, I think it was, and then came to California, got a master's degree in marriage, marriage, family, and child counseling. Became
Okay.
a therapist, um, and primarily working with nonprofits with drug and alcohol addiction.
All right. So would you say, please don't take this wrong. Not
That's
everybody
all right.
listening is going to know this.
Yeah.
Would you say there was a lot of drug and alcohol issues from Vietnam?
Well, that's what I've heard. I didn't see a lot of it directly, and even as a therapist, I wasn't working in a agency that was focused on treating veterans. So I'm not sure how many people I actually had direct contact with in that capacity that were from Vietnam or were even veterans for that matter. So I can't really speak from personal experience. I think I can say I think a number of Vietnam veterans were exposed to drugs, whether they chose to use drugs. I mean, they had the opportunity to use drugs. I started using marijuana when I was there. That's when I first got introduced to it. And I think there was probably, I would say, a higher incidence, but this is a guess, of alcoholism amongst veterans,
I
only
guess.
because it was free. And I mean, it wasn't free to get, but you could easily get to it if you were around a base or something. Not if you were in the boonies, but um, it people were smoking a lot of tobacco, drinking alcohol, I think. So I'd say it's probably pretty high, or maybe higher than the general population, but I can't speak from
No.
the
I,
data.
I just thought that's why you went into the family therapy. Like,
Oh, well,
you know,
part of it went, long story short.
because most people who go into psychology or stuff like that are wanting to deal with an issue
Yeah.
and resolve it, and that's why they go into it. And that I'd probably say 80% of the people who go into that's why they go into it. And I could be wrong. But
Yeah.
it just
Well, I
seems
relate
that
to it.
way. It seems that way that they
Yeah.
go into to get their own help, and then from that they're able to help other people.
Right. Well, initially, I was going to become an astronaut when I was first in college. That didn't work. My eyes went bad. I dropped out. Got drafted, enlisted. Decided at that point when I was there, I saw the poverty and wanted to become a social worker. So when I came back, I got into a state college in Kentucky, but they didn't do bachelor's degrees in social work. So I focused on sociology. Came to California with the idea I'd get a master's in social work, but then along came program for marriage and family therapist. So I did that. My first full-time job, coincidentally, was drug and alcohol, and I had grown up with a dad who binged. I think he had PTSD from World War II in the Pacific, and had a problem with anger. Abused my mother. So I think a lot of it at that point is when I first got the job, was offered that job as a counselor dealing with drug and alcohol addiction. I can relate to this. I know this. And so that gave me some confidence starting out in that position, dealing with that population. So I started learning a lot about myself in that process. So I didn't go into it with that intention, but I immediately recognized that was part of that process. I think that was kind of driving me early on. Yeah, because of my own personal issues.
Well, and for what I've doing this for 4 years, talking to everybody I talk to 2 a week, and more than that in the past. I just find that most of us go into the service because of issues that we have, dealt with. Not normal people run towards danger. Normally, you're supposed to run away from it,
Oh,
but
yeah.
we right. But we have things, so we can handle this. We take care of everybody else because what we saw and everything else. And I just see that, and I see that with our members. If you're going in for
Mm.
PTSD and other things, you had a perfect childhood. But other than that, Otherwise, they'll tell you, "Oh, that came from your childhood."
Yeah.
No, it was the people being blown up or what I took care of that was there that actually had.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Well, I think in general, humans gravitate toward what they're familiar with and what they know, as opposed to what they don't know.
right.
So you're right. I agree.
So how long did you just stay doing the alcohol and that kind of counseling?
Well, I did that for. I was licensed in 1980. I did it for 25 years before I retired. Most of the time, I was with agencies focused directly or specifically or primarily on drug and alcohol. But later on, it expanded to include other disorders like schizophrenia, psychiatric disorders. So I'd say 25 years, and when I retired, I let my license lapse because I didn't want to have to pay for continuing education if I wasn't going to use it.
I can understand that. You kept it for at least a year, though, right?
Well, I let it lapse, and once I retired, it was still active for about a year or so.
Okay.
And then when it came up to renew, I said, "Man, do I really want to pay the money to do the classes to and then pay for the I decided not to."
Did you ever help any veterans while you're going through the process, or focus on them at all? Eh,
As I said, I don't recall specifically working with veterans. I think there were probably some, particularly early on, and that would have been about 1980, 79, 80, in a adult co-ed alcohol facility. I mean, alcohol and drug facility. Some of them were probably veterans, but I didn't. We didn't identify them specifically. It was just if you got a drug problem, then that's what counts.
Now, have you focused on any PTSD or anything else like that since getting out, or is there any issue with that you've dealt with at all?
Well, when I first was discharged and then went back to school to work on getting as it was, my bachelor's degree in sociology, I had my level of suicidality increased to the point I was starting to have major thoughts of suicide. And so I sought counseling at that point and was active with my counseling for about a year or so until I graduated um, from and got my BA, came to California. And then my first full-time job, coincidentally, as a counselor, we had what was called staff assessment meetings once a week for 2 hours. And we actually used the counseling techniques amongst ourselves and processed the issues we were having as we did with our client population. So there was a whole lot of stuff getting processed during that time. And then, and since then, when I started writing, part of the interest in my writing my Vietnam memoir, and I guess we'll talk about that later.
Yeah,
But
that's what I'm in, Connor. I'm working towards that. If you understand,
okay,
I got my method to my madness. All right, so
yeah, okay, yeah. So I
I've done a couple of these. So
yeah, in writing that I was doing some processing, but most of it when you're writing, you're clarifying your thoughts. They're congealing. Whereas if you're not, and they kind of run around in your head, they're not very clear. And then when you write them, you can come back in a week or 2 weeks or a month or whatever and look at it and say, "Oh yeah," and then you have an opportunity to amend it somehow in your mind. But otherwise, if you're not writing things down, or you're not even verbalizing them for that matter, it's like a fog in your brain.
and when did you want to? How come you were looking? Uh, Why did you want to write the memoirs that you did? Was it
Uh,
another type of therapy? Was it something that you while you're going through stuff, they were like, okay, if you were dealing with things, because some people do writing classes, some other people do other things, and that's why
mhm.
they. So, why did you do that?
Well, I did around the time, probably about 1998, maybe even earlier than that. I started becoming more and more interested in writing, and I took classes and I went to some conferences and whatnot. I think, and my first memoir was my childhood years, Once Upon a Kentucky Farm. And then my second one, and I got that published. And then my second one was Brothels and Bombs in the Night, and that's my Vietnam one. As I started writing one and then the other, it became clearer to me that one of the things I was trying to do was, I think, trying to put some of those ghosts to rest. I think that looking back on it and being a therapist, that if we're going to heal from an issue, first we have to acknowledge it to ourselves and be honest. Then we got to share it with a higher power, perhaps. Then we have to tell somebody else. It might be a sponsor in a 12-step program, or a counselor, a therapist, and talk about it. So first you have the thinking, and then you have the talking, which involves emoting and re-experiencing some of the feelings, or the feelings about the process. But I think another step, which I mentioned earlier about writing, helps congeal things, is to write. That is another extension of that process of healing, I think, for me anyway. And so as I started writing, I said, yeah, I want to write those. And I focused, or thought I was writing it to help other people, which is still true, but I think more than not, I wanted to write for myself, my own healing. And then once it's written, of course, it's out there for other people.
Right. How did you, I assume you self-published this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I had been, as I said, doing classes and conferences and things for a while before COVID, excuse me. And I had the manuscripts basically roughed out or drafted. But I'd been putting out feelers for agents and whatnot before COVID came along, and I wasn't getting a lot of responses. Now, partly because I hadn't really polished them that well, but during COVID, sitting around, I decided that I wasn't going to live forever. I wasn't even sure I was going to survive COVID, for that matter, that whole period. I suspect that's true for other people, and it was very traumatic in that sense. But I decided to get off the pot and do something. So had a close, I call her a friend, who's an editor, and I had her edit my first book, and then I found a publisher and get it published. And I did that almost immediately for my second book, the Vietnam memoir, within a year, and got it published. I'm working on my third one now, but I'm not in so much of a rush because I want to do a better job, I guess. I mean, as anyone, you get better and better at what you're doing over time. And so I think that I'm not in any hurry. I just want to do the best job I can on the third one. However, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it was just trying to understand, because it's a lot easier to write these days and get books
Yeah.
published than it was 20 years ago or 30 years
Oh,
ago,
yeah.
or even 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Because I had my book, I had self-published it. I didn't have to have word, and I own all the words to it. When you have somebody who publishes your book for you and pays you money for it, you no longer own that information.
Mm-hmm.
And people need to realize that. That's why self-publishing is so good, is you can now turn it, I know yours is about Vietnam and stuff, but for people like me, when I write stuff, I create courses from it. And which if I sold those rights, I could not do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Self-publishing gives people a lot more freedom than used to be in the past. There was initially with self-publishing how would I say? I don't know if it was a stigma. The traditional publishers didn't look too well upon self-publishing, so there was a stigma that was first attached to self-publishing. It's like, those books aren't as good as, or they have not been vetted, or blah blah. That's not necessarily true, but there's a whole gamut of quality of books out there. I mean, some are excellent. I wouldn't say all of them are at the same level, but there's a lot more there are more people publishing, a lot more information out there. So it makes it easier for people to find something they really want or really need or like. And that's a good thing about self-publishing.
Right. But and the negative thing about it is because there's so many more books and there's so
Oh, yeah.
much, and
The
it's
competition, the marketing and the competition is horrendous. That's the piece I don't like.
yeah. Because I was talking to somebody, I'm like, like if you write it, I'm in the mortgage industry, so I wrote a book about financial freedom, building personal wealth through home ownership. Yes, I got number one in mortgage and real estate category, which is good,
Mm,
but the issues still. People have to find it. People have to read it. I use it for something else. I give it to my clients. I give it to other people's clients. It helps them. I give it to kids. I give it away because
mm,
it's all about education. And that's because there is nobody talking about in college or in high school how to buy a home, all that kind of stuff. They don't talk about that. They
mm,
don't talk about how to make sure you have money in your account, right? Your checkbook account. Not that anybody itemizes your checking account anymore, but it's just certain things that we don't know. So the books, being able to self-publish, you can get books out there that you can give to people, and it's just much easier.
right.
And
I
this,
look. I did a. Excuse me. I did a Google search a few years ago, um, developing a presentation about writing, and I think at that point it's probably surpassed that now. I believe it was something like books in print, unique books, not copies or translated into other languages, 174 million at that point, and something like 2 million books being published every year. And that was an Amazon figure, I think, from a year or two ago. So it is, finding these, it's worse than trying to find a needle in a haystack.
no, but if you categorize it right, you put in the right category, and everything else, people will be able to find it.
Mm,
Um, and then what people don't realize is you can have it on Amazon. You can also have it on, I want to say Scribe, but it's not Scribe. The one, there's two different ways to do it through Amazon, direct with Amazon, and then another third party that goes there, and then they put it to Amazon. But you
mm,
can put that link on your website to where when you click on it, it takes you to your shopping cart, and they can buy it from you instead of Amazon. So you make more of the
mm,
money. But a lot of people want to have all the reviews on Amazon to get people to shop for it. But it just depends
hmm.
on how you're doing the marketing. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and I mean, so going back to your book, has it helped you writing them?
Well, I think so. Yeah. I mean,
Don't take me wrong. I think so.
well,
Is that from a therapist point of view that
yes,
you
the
think so?
mind is complex. It's not simple, and it's not usually black or white, yes and no. That's why I hesitate to be definitive there. But um, it certainly, um, well, it provides me an opportunity to say, hey, if you rather than me take 2 hours or 10 hours try to explain something to you, read the book. So it simplifies my life in that sense. It's like I've put, not that I've purged everything about it, but I've kind of purged that section of my life because it's written down. I don't have to be thinking so much about it anymore.
Well,
Um,
as a therapist or somebody who's done it, you probably know you would have somebody potentially write things down about what's bothering them, or because I know going through what I went through and talking to my person, they're like, all right, now if you take the sound away, is it the same? you know
mhm,
and
mhm.
there's things that you worked on getting it on paper to get it out of yourself, and as you're doing it, you're thinking about it, you're writing it down, you're going through the process to where then now you can maybe not think about it as much as, or you can still think it, because PTS doesn't go away.
No,
You just learn to deal with it.
right, right. You learn to deal with it in a better way. Hopefully,
Well,
that's the plan.
yeah.
But as I wrote it, being I these are creative nonfiction, which I go into depth with trying to place a scene and doing the dialogue. As I did that, when I was writing it, I had to kind of settle on the scene and try to recreate the feeling I was having about it. And that's part of that process, which you have with therapy or going to 12-step meetings and talking about your issues for the day or the week. Uh, so it's like reliving those, and then as you do that, it kind of changes how you relate to it. It it desensitizes you to it in some ways. So yeah,
I think you said before, remembering, not forgetting.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I that's the point in one of my books is a lot of people avoid their trauma. They try to forget it and push it down. Maybe another word is deny, suppress. Doesn't work. As you said earlier, PTSD doesn't go away. Trauma doesn't go away simply because you don't think about it. It's there. It's kind of latent. As somebody else said, and I can't quote them, or no, I don't recall who it was, but PTSD doesn't show up as a memory. It shows up as a reaction. And it's like that. You don't have an opportunity if you have PTSD. The stronger it is, the more strongly you react or the quicker you react, but you don't have time to think about it. You're just in it. So I think kind of following along with the idea of therapists, to try to forget something isn't your best course of action. Remember it, live it. And I think of another idea is, the best way to get across or on the other side of the fire is you go through it. And you want to do it with people who support you in the process. I mean, you don't want to do it alone. I don't think you can do it alone.
Well, not at all. What if you don't have people supporting? You're talking about because the reason I'm bringing this up, because a lot of people who are dealing with, who have PTSD, usually do not deal with it until they've ruined every relationship they ever had, and they're alone.
Yeah. Well,
so I'm just trying to have you clarify what they should do at that point.
Right. Well, one of the phrases from 12-step program, particularly alcohol, I think, when you get sick and tired of being sick and tired, if you think you've ruined your life, if you can recognize it and own up to that, you're tired of living that kind of life, or tired of wrecking your life or ruining your relationships or whatever, reach out to somebody who is a therapist or a counselor. You might start with a VA group somewhere, and make some social contacts. Then from there, you can feel out where you want to go to get into some more serious support environment.
Yeah, I was just trying to clarify what you meant by not doing it alone, because and you meant by getting professional help one way or another. Support groups, whatever works for you to get started and dealing with this stuff. Because I do know going to the VA is not easy for the mental stuff. Medical stuff's pretty easy if it's in the right town. Like I know Modesto, where I live, and other places, you can go to their clinics. It's great. I went to one up in Sacramento. I was like, holy, that's not as nice as the one I have. But dealing with the PTSD through them is, it's in my medical record because I had to upload it. How I said that I see how vets commit suicide in the parking lot because of how hard it is to get an appointment through for PTSD.
Yeah. Well, one avenue for vets, but I mentioned vet groups like BFW or whatever, and start making contact there, and then you can ask them, where else can I go, or how else can I get the help that I need.
Well, I'm also getting, because you got to be careful, because if you don't, you have to document it in order, if you want to go get any benefits from it, you have to make sure you get it documented. And most of the time people try to go through the one to get help through the VA, but also have it documented. And that might not be the best place to do that from the beginning.
Yeah. But there might be low cost or relatively free therapy or counseling support groups outside of the VA process.
Yeah, there are, because like where I live, there's a few of them, and we're a smaller town, so it's just finding them and finding the groups. If you want help, they're out there. You just have to find them. Connard, anything we want to add before we go, since this is your story and not mine?
I'm not sure how much we want to talk about the books in particular. Let me do this.
All right. Barbed Wire, Brothels and Bombs.
Yeah, that's my proof copy. That's why I got all these little things up here as reference. And then my first one is this one. And this is not for veterans per se, but general public, because both of these are dealing with trauma. This is my early childhood. And of course, this is my late adolescence, early manhood.
And what's the next one coming out?
Well, the next one is about my climbing experiences. which is also, I think, going to be a crossover with memoir. I don't have a title yet. I'm hoping to publish the end of this year, but it could be something such as Peak Bagging Adventures, subtitle, The Ache, the Awe, the Ache, and the Angst. I love alliteration, so it's that's why I complicate it maybe too much. I don't know.
Right. And so that's your third one. Do you have plans to write another one after that?
No, not at this point. I may go back to some shorter pieces or whatnot, but I do blogging, and people can get to my blogs. I do blogging on my world travel.
Where's that?
Blogging
Where's
on
your
my
blog at?
ConnardHogan.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Make it easy.
Yeah. And I welcome comments from there too, so people can go and look and read and all that about me and my blogs and send me emails.
Okay. Connor, thanks so much for coming on the show today and talking about your books and your past. I appreciate your story.
Sure. I appreciate you having me on, Ed.
All right. Again, thank you so much for being here. And
All
go
right.
check out his stuff. Go to ConnorHogan.com and check out his stuff.